Jennifer Jacobs.
And I'm Mark Halperin. With all due respect to Brooklyn,
this is Iowa!
and this is Cedar Rapids, as in Iowa. We're here because there are no fewer than 15 presidential candidates in the state this weekend. I attended an event with one of them, Wisconsin Governor Scott Walker, a couple blocks from here, where he was doing a town hall meeting this afternoon. Jennifer Jacobs, from our partner, the Des Moines Registers, joining me here now for a classic Hawkeye twofer this weekend. The Democrats are having a Hall of Fame celebration tonight. 1,200 people in the room, in the convention center behind us. It's the first time that all the parties' candidates for president are going to be at the same event together at the same time. They're expected to give 15-minute speeches. Tomorrow, Family Leadership Summit for the Republicans. We'll talk about that, too. But, Jennifer, you've curtain raised both events within the Register. Tell us what you're looking for here at this Democratic event tonight.
This could be a bellwether for where the early energy is in Iowa. So Bernie Sanders has had crowds that rival Barack Obama's crowds from 2008, right before the big vote, not even this early on. And Hillary Clinton has gotten the wake-up calls. She's bulked up her staff to more than 60 people. She just put down $3.6 million in advertising for November through the caucuses. So it'll be interesting to see how this all translates tonight and how the energy is in this crowd.
Huge crowd. They're activists. They care a lot about the party, the future of the country. They care a lot about the Iowa Democratic values. And it gives all the candidates a chance to reach them. We've seen at past big events, we've seen at the JJ dinner in 2000, for instance, with Al Gore and Bill Bradley. It's a chance to say to the party activists, the press corps of Iowa, like you, the national press corps like me, a chance to say, here's what I stand for, here's what I believe in, here's where I want to take the party and the country. Very big opportunity for all five of them, really.
Well, we've seen people really, have fireworks before and take off from these dinners like this, so it can be really crucial.
Yeah. Now, 1,200 people, this will be one of the biggest events that anybody addresses this year. In a state like Iowa, 1,200 people is a lot of activists in the state. My question for you is, do you have the sense from talking to the five camps, is anybody going to try to do something big tonight? Is anybody going to try to do something that changes the contours of the race and of their campaign?
I just hear it doesn't sound like there's going to be a whole lot of sharp elbows. That nobody is going to be explicitly saying anything about the front runner, Hillary Clinton, but there's going to be a lot of subtle contrasts.
Yeah. Hillary Clinton's campaign announced a couple of endorsements. It'll be interesting to see how much she plays up the establishment side of her effort. All right. The Republicans fire back tomorrow in Ames, 10 of their presidential candidates, taking questions from Republican strategist and pollster Frank Luntz, and then they open the floor to the 2,700 spectators expected at that event. Jennifer, again, Ibid, same question. What are you expecting tomorrow with the Republicans? What are you looking for?
It just really is unprecedented to have this 1-2 punch with the Democrats one night, with all the Democrats here, and then the very next day, almost all of the Republicans. But the emphasis at tomorrow night's event will be very spiritual. It'll be issues that are crucial to Christian conservatives, so that's not determinative of the issues for the entire field. So one of the things we'll be looking for is, does this trip up people like Scott Walker or Marco Rubio, who really don't want to offend people who are more in the middle? You know, you don't want to say anything to appease these evangelical conservative voters that can come back to haunt you.
Lots of big candidates here. Bush isn't here. Rand Paul isn't here. A couple of others. Trump is coming, and he's not been, although he's taken positions now on social issues. He says he's against same-sex marriage. He says he's pro-life. How Trump does in this event, whether he dominates the event, it's just the reality of the week. He is riding high in the polls. He is someone who a lot of those people will be excited to see. I still think Ted Cruz and Rick Perry and Mike Huckabee are three guys I'm going to be watching closely. Sure. Do they rise to the occasion? None of them have had, within Iowa this cycle, a huge moment. This is a chance for all of them to show that they can be the consensus evangelical candidate.
And that they're not going to be stepped on by somebody like Donald Trump.
Right. The other thing is Rubio, who needs to find in one of the first four states a place he can win. He is right for this group on most of the issues, but does he rise to the occasion? The other thing is, Frank Luntz asks emotional questions. When he's done these events in the past, he's asked questions that have caused some of these candidates to tear up. And which one of these performs that way? We haven't really seen an event like that. We've seen stump speeches. We had a Q&A in the state on ag. Let's see how they do on emotional questions. All right. Remember, speaking of Donald Trump, that time he was a birther, or that time 3 years ago, that he demanded that the president release his college transcripts? We do.
President Obama is the least transparent president in the history of this country. If Barack Obama opens up and gives his college records and applications, and if he gives his passport applications and records, I will give to a charity of his choice, Inner City Children in Chicago, American Cancer Society, AIDS Research, anything he wants, a check immediately for $5 million.
Well, Trump Tower isn't just a building. The man is towering right now over the Republican presidential candidates in most new polls. And it's no surprise that, like a swarm of gnats on a muggy summer Cedar Rapids evening, the press scrutiny is going to the top. This morning on Morning Joe, I asked the man in a classic Trump phoner if he would release his grades from Wharton. You made a big point of trying to get President Obama to release his college records, grades, and transcripts. I'm wondering if you would release your records from Wharton.
Well, you know, interestingly, first of all, I don't know. I mean, it's something I've never thought about. But the answer is I will certainly think about it. I was a very good student. I went to a great school, the Wharton School of Finance.
You won't commit today to doing it?
You know, it's the first time I've ever heard the question.
That's not exactly accurate. Trump's team passed on the opportunity when the Daily Caller had previously asked if he would release his grades. But forget that, Jennifer. At this point, what is most likely to slow Trump down? Is it press scrutiny? Is it attacks from his rivals? Is it his own mistakes or something else?
That's something that I've been asking Iowa Republicans a lot lately. And one of them said to me, Donald Trump is kind of like really juicy instant gratification television. On TV, crimes get solved in an hour. Everybody falls in love on The Bachelor. And he's the kind of guy, you know, that really can appeal to that crowd. However, there's a difference between telling it like it is and being obnoxious. And ask yourself this, if it didn't work for Chris Christie, whose negatives are really high in Iowa, why does it work for somebody like Donald Trump?
Well, there is nobody like him. I think the thing that's going to bring him down is eventually it's going to be time to pick a president. And people are going to ask, a lot of Iowans, a lot of people, Republicans in general, are going to say, is this someone we really want to send in a general election? Is this someone we really want to be have as commander-in-chief? He is not doing much now to act like a more serious person. Today in an interview, he called for a boycott against Mexico. He was, the Huffington Post said they were no longer going to cover him as a political person. He attacked them in a statement. I think at some point, by his own weight and talking about things that seem frivolous, at least some Republicans are going to turn the other way. But I don't think his mistakes really hurt him. He just doesn't play by the normal rules.
Calling him people a dummy doesn't really go over very well, though,
in the long term. I agree. All right. Coming up, choose your own adventure. We got Bernie Sanders. We got Dan Balz. Either way, you win. After this word from our sponsors. Our guest tonight is a guy I met on the plane on the flight into Cedar Rapids. He's a monster man, a grandpa, and a senator. Bernie Sanders, thanks for coming back.
My pleasure.
1,200 Iowa Democrats in this convention center behind us in just a couple hours. A big night for you and for the other people who want to be the party's nominee. Will you be nervous at all?
Yeah, I will be. But I'm confident that the message that we're going to be offering, and that is that establishment politics and establishment economics is not working for the middle class and working families. That the time is long overdue that we took on the billionaire class and created an economy that worked for all people. I think that's a message that will resonate.
So that's your message. Do you have a goal tonight except to give your normal speech?
Yes, I want all 1,200 people, including Hillary Clinton's supporters, to come out and put on my pins. That is my goal.
That's your goal. All right.
My goal. It's a modest goal. It's a modest goal.
So just to go back to the nervous thing, when you get nervous, what happens?
I get louder.
Louder.
Occasionally I get monstrous.
So you might do the monster on stage?
Might do the monster. Right.
All right. It'd be cool if you did.
You called the Iran deal, you called it a victory for diplomacy over saber rattling.
Yeah.
Now, what if they were to renege? What would President Sanders do? If they did renege, would you consider a military option?
I think it's absurd to be talking about a military option right now, but the president, we just went through a war in Iraq. We went through a war in Afghanistan. I'm the former chairman of the Senate Veterans Committee, and if you want, I will tell you what the cost of those wars are. So before people start talking about going to war, we have got to exhaust every effort to reach an agreement with Iran so that they do not get a nuclear weapon, but we do it in a peaceful way. And I kind of resent this easy talk about war. I've talked to too many veterans who came back without arms and legs, with PTSD, to be talking about another war right now.
Totally respect your wanting to keep that as far away from the discussion as possible. Most people who run for president say war is the last resort, but you can't take it off the table. Are you not? Do you not put yourself?
I'm not a pacifist, of course.
So you wouldn't take it. You'd reserve that option, even though you'd put it far down the list.
It's always an option, but after the war in Iraq and after the war in Afghanistan, which cost us so much in human life and in human suffering, it is very much the last option. And I applaud, let me be clear, I applaud the President and John Kerry for their extraordinarily difficult work in trying to forge an agreement with Iran.
I want to talk to you about the minimum wage, which is obviously a big issue within the party and the country right now. You support, if I understand it, a $15 national minimum wage.
Yes, over a period of several years.
Right, phased in. A lot of Democrats, even some Democrats say maybe not that high, maybe 12, whatever. I'm just wondering, what do you base $15 on? Do you have a study or some economist who tells you that's the right level? Why not 20?
Well, the study is, A, what is feasible, what we can do politically, and B, what are the needs of working people? Right now, the $7.25 minimum wage is a starvation wage. People can't live on it. And many of those people end up going on Medicaid and food stamps. So in a sense, we are subsidizing the McDonald's and the Walmarts of the world. $15 an hour is not a whole lot, but at least it allows people to live with a shred of dignity and take care of their basic needs.
If a higher number were feasible, would a higher number be better?
No, I mean, you can say, why not $500 an hour? There are limits to what you can do right now. I think $15 an hour would be a very good start in providing dignity to people and cutting the level of poverty in America.
Right. One of the things that your critics have said is that they don't think that you could get much done in Washington. Let's talk about a Sanders cabinet. Can you talk about the kinds of people that you would put in a Sanders cabinet, and even name some people from past cabinets that you might?
It's a little bit premature to be naming people, but this is what I will tell you. I think what we have seen over the last number of decades, both in Republican and Democratic administrations, is a heavy reliance on Wall Street folks. In fact, Goldman Sachs has kind of a revolving door. They're not going to be in my cabinet. There are some great economists out there who understand how the economy works, who have come up with a lot of ideas on how we can expand the middle class, how we can protect the needs of working people. Those are the people I would bring into my cabinet, not the Wall Street folks.
So let me ask you, again, I'm sure you don't want to name names, as Jennifer asked you to, for people who might be in your cabinet. Is that true? You don't want to offer?
I'm sorry.
Are you going to name anybody who might be in your cabinet?
It's a little bit.
So let's look at.
Let me win the election first.
So let's look at American history on two jobs. In the history of the country, who's a defense secretary who you thought did a good job, and who's a treasury secretary who you thought did a good job?
Well, I can tell you some that I think did not do a good job.
Oh, I knew you could. How about ones you thought were good, though?
Well, I would tell you that I think that in terms of somebody who I would like to have on board, it certainly would not be a Donald Rumsfeld type in terms of Secretary of Defense. But I think that in terms of if you're going to be looking at maybe a Secretary of Treasury, to answer your question, somebody like a Bob Reich would be somebody who I think would be good.
Okay, but just to go back to defense, I understand, I knew you wouldn't like Rumsfeld, but is there anybody who's ever served as Secretary of Defense who you'd said, that's the kind of person, values, judgment, policy positions, I thought that was a good Secretary of Defense?
Well, the folks who were around in World War II, I think, did a pretty good job.
Okay, and how about Treasury? Bob Rubin is pretty popular with the Democratic Party.
Bob Rubin would be exactly the last person.
Last person.
I mean, Bob Rubin was one of the architects for the deregulation of Wall Street. That is what Wall Street is about. So
Lloyd Benson? Lloyd Benson?
No, not a Lloyd Benson either. Very nice man, but not my Secretary of Treasury. Again, these guys are the folks who come from the moneyed interests. I think we will get people who represent working families.
So we flew in together, as I said, and I took a picture of you, approved by your staff, loading your own bag into the gate check.
And I was waiting for you to help me, but you didn't.
I thought it might be considered insulting. And plus, I was taking the picture. You take your own dry cleaning in now and pick it up, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, you're doing all the normal stuff that people do. Do you have time to do that stuff and run for president?
Well, I do other things as well.
Yeah.
I try to live a normal life. I try to get home whenever I can, which is too rarely. Spend time with my kids and my grandchildren and my wife. So I try as much as possible. This is a pretty crazy world running for president, but I do try to make it as normal as I can.
You could take some campaign money, hire a young person at, $25,000 a year and say, go pick up my dry cleaning. Would that make more sense or no?
Is this one of the major issues facing the American people?
You always come here and we ask you a bunch of policy things, and then we like to also, as we've discussed, get people to know you.
I realize picking up my dry cleaning is one of the important issues facing America, but I'm a little bit more focused on why the middle class is disappearing, why we have massive levels of income and wealth inequality. But to answer your question, I will continue to try to pick up.
I was proposing a way to create a new job in America.
You want the job?
Pick up your dry cleaning? I'd like to do it for a week.
But
and then we can
Bloomberg
talk.
probably pays you more than I will pay. That's the only thing.
Pick up your dry cleaning for a week, I'll do it. Last question about this weekend, just to finish with the event, 1,200 people here tonight. You and Secretary Clinton, you notice we haven't asked you very much about her. Normally you get a lot of questions about her. I'm just wondering tonight, are you going to be listening closely to what she has to say?
Absolutely. I was at the Democratic caucus last week. Listen closely. Look, let me reiterate what I've said a million times. I've known Hillary Clinton for 25 years. I like her and I respect her. We disagree on a whole lot of issues, and I hope that we're going to have a civil, intelligent campaign where we will discuss.
She said some nice things about you, we were told at the Senate lunch. Is that true?
Yeah.
What did she say?
Ask about the Senate. I'm a humble guy.
Okay. Senator Bernie Sanders, who's given a big speech tonight, and he may be a little nervous, so we'll be watching for the monster to come out. Senator, thanks for joining us. Good luck this evening. Appreciate it. Coming up, the Dean of the American Political Press Corps, our friend Dan Balz, the Washington Post, after this word from our sponsors. Our second guest tonight writes, talks, and occasionally literally eats politics. Not literally. Dan Balz, chief correspondent for the Washington Post. Thanks for coming back.
Happy to be.
Always good to see you in Iowa. Here with me and Jennifer Jacobs, the Register. Let's just talk about the Republican race overall. You write about it regularly. Where do you see things standing now in terms of who's in the top tier, who's doing well right now?
Donald Trump.
Yeah.
Donald Trump and Donald Trump. I mean, we're in a perhaps strange period. We don't know. He's taken all the oxygen out, to use a cliche. It makes it very difficult for anybody else, possibly with the exception of Jeb Bush, to get any visibility, any traction. The good thing for all of them is it's July and not November or December, and we'll have to see what happens to Mr. Trump as the months go on.
Is Trump doing well here?
I would think so. He's definitely getting the attention. People are turning out in big numbers. There is interest and they're paying attention. But wouldn't you think that Jeb Bush would be kind of, he wouldn't mind all this attention that Donald Trump is getting? Because his numbers are staying steady in the polling. Yeah. It's eating into the numbers for Cruz and Carson and Perry. So you would think he actually probably doesn't mind.
What are you hearing from the donor class and the campaigns about the Trump rise, that they hope it'll just go away by fall?
Well, they do hope that will happen. Everybody I've asked the question, how long does this sustain itself? Nobody knows. I think the hope of the establishment, obviously, is that it's a very short summer fad that he has, but nobody's quite sure. I mean, he's obviously tapping into something. I think the point you made earlier in the program is the right one. Right now, he's an attention grabber. People want to hear what he says, and he's registering with at least some segment of the population.
Right.
At some point, people will ask themselves, who do I really want to be president? Who do I really want to lead the Republican Party?
Right.
I think at that point, there's a different level of scrutiny and a different set of judgments that come into play.
The one thing it reminds me of is Perot. When Perot was at his height, leading in the national three-way in '92, the Democrats and Republicans didn't have any idea what to do with him. Over time, he got scrutiny about crazy, wild things he'd said in his contemporaneous statements, but I don't get the sense that stuff hurts Trump the way it hurt Perot.
But people are interested in the celebrity right now. He's organizing a big picnic in Iowa where there's going to be free food, and so
when's that?
And it's coming up soon.
Free food. I want to be there. Walker announced on Monday you were there. How do you think his launch week is going?
Well, I think it's been basically pretty good. I think he had a little bit of a hiccup with the issue with the Boy Scouts and gays, and he had to again kind of clarify himself. He's had to do that several times over the last 4 or 5 months. But the ending of the John Doe investigation was a weight off his shoulders. And you and I were just over at this event that he had earlier here. He had a big crowd, good turnout. So
those clarifications, which, as you said, he's had to do several times, sometimes on big policy issues like immigration, on abortion, but sometimes on smaller things. What do you make of that? Is that just bad luck, or is there something about his skill level that causes him to put himself in those positions?
I think the issue is what his instincts are. It's a combination of his convictions and his instincts. And I think the risk for him is that the more he does that, there are two things that happen. One is he either gets pushed too far to the right in terms of what people think of him, which is not really where he wanted to be when he started out this campaign. And the second is it continues to raise the question of how ready is he, how knowledgeable is he, and how much does he know. And so he'll have to, he's done a lot of homework, and he's pretty smooth on a lot of issues right now, but spontaneously, there's still moments when he's a little bit wobbly.
There is a thing, that's happening in Iowa. It's a Walker flipometer that's, being talked about by Iowa Republicans, and I would say it's in the yellow right now, and Republicans are waiting to see if it goes into the red or if he can get it back.
If he does more of these, and it suggests, it's a little bit ironic because, of course, the main thing he's running on is I'm a man of solid conviction, and I don't waver. And yet, I think it is his biggest problem right now.
But I think on a lot of those major issues, those big issues, he is pretty solid. He does know what he thinks about those.
Right. So, Jeb Bush given a speech on Monday to paint himself as kind of the anti-establishment figure, son of a president, brother of a president. Clearly, he has some credentials in that respect. He's not been someone working in Washington. Can he convince Iowan Republicans, Republicans around the country, that he is an anti-establishment candidate?
He's a reformer with results.
Right.
If you remember that phrase
line
from George W. Bush's campaign when he was being, threatened by John McCain. Look, anybody who has not served time in Washington can try to present themselves as from outside of Washington, and he can do that with some credibility, and he can talk about a record he compiled in Florida and some of the reforms that he put in place there. Presenting himself, and I'm not convinced he's going to try to do this, as not part of the establishment, I don't think will sell.
Right. They're not quite the same thing, but he is going to have a little bit of a hurdle there, and obviously they're making that concerted effort because he can't win if he's only a candidate seen as establishment push. Jennifer, thank you. Dan, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it. Dan Valls, always informative. We'll be right back with a tease of our very big lineup of next week's programs after this. Very big weekend, as you know, here in Iowa. We'll be covering it all. Then on Monday, we'll have an interview with Ted Cruz. Tuesday, John Kasich announces for president. I'll be in Columbus for that. And we got some other big guests we'll let you know about next week. Thanks to Jennifer Jacobs of The Register for joining me. We'll see you on Monday. Until then, sayonara.